Dr. Kelricks adjusted the neural monitoring array for the third time that cycle, his 6 manipulator appendages moving with practiced precision. The observation chamber hummed with barely contained energy as the consortium's finest xenopsychologists gathered around the containment field. Inside, 3 humans sat calmly in chairs that weren't quite designed for their bipedal frames. "Subject vitals are nominal," announced researcher Voth from her station. "Initiating fear protocol Delta 7. The lights dimmed. Holographic projections flickered to life around the humans, carefully calculated nightmares drawn from their species' collective unconscious. Towering predators with slavering jaws, endless falls into bottomless voids, the crushing weight of deep water. The consortium had studied 1,000 species, mapped the terror centers of 100 different brain structures. This should have been routine. The middle human, a female identified as Dr. Sarah Chen, tilted her head and smiled. "That's a Tyrannosaurus Rex," she said, her voice carrying easily through the translator field. "Nice attention to detail on the feather placement. Little outdated on the posture, though. Current paleontology suggests they carried their tails higher." Kelricks felt his throat sacs constrict in confusion. The fear response readings were negligible. Worse, the human's frontal cortex showed heightened activity in areas associated with curiosity and analytical thinking. "Increase intensity," he ordered. The holograms shifted. Now the humans were surrounded by scenes of cosmic horror, writhing masses of impossible geometry, the heat death of stars, the void between galaxies where sanity went to die. The consortium had broken lesser species with these visions. 3 separate civilizations had begged to be returned to their homeworlds after mere minutes of exposure. The male human on the left, designated Marcus Webb, leaned forward in his chair. "Is that supposed to be non-Euclidean space?" he asked. "Because if you're trying to simulate hyperbolic geometry, you've got the angles wrong. Here, I can show you the math." "This is impossible," Voth whispered, her sensory fronds trembling. "Every species fears the infinite. It's a universal constant." "Clearly not universal enough," muttered the third human, an older male named Dr. James Porter. He was actually taking notes on a small electronic device the researchers had failed to confiscate. "Are you folks familiar with H.P. Lovecraft? Human author. Early 20th century Earth standard. You're basically recreating his aesthetic. We've been exploring these concepts in fiction for over a century." Kelricks felt something he rarely experienced in his 3 decades of research: genuine uncertainty. He initiated Protocol Omega, the final test, the one reserved for species that showed abnormal resilience. The chamber transformed. Now the humans were shown their own deaths, not abstract deaths, but personal, intimate endings based on their psychological profiles. The collapse of everything they loved. The futility of their existence. The cruel indifference of an uncaring universe. Dr. Chen watched her own simulation for a moment, then turned to face the observation window. Despite the one-way nature of the barrier, her eyes seemed to lock directly onto Kelricks's position. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Why are you so afraid of fear itself?" The question hung in the recycled atmosphere like a suspended particle. "We are not afraid," Kelricks responded through the chamber's speakers. "We are researchers. We study." "You study fear in others," Dr. Porter interrupted, "but you've designed this entire facility to avoid experiencing it yourselves. Climate-controlled environments. Predictable hierarchies. Every risk calculated and minimized. When was the last time you felt genuinely uncertain about anything?" Webb stood up, and several consortium researchers flinched reflexively. The human raised his hands in a placating gesture that somehow made him seem more dangerous. "Here's what I'm curious about," he said. "You've clearly studied our species' capacity for fear. Our fight-or-flight responses, our evolutionary predator awareness, all that good stuff. But did you study what we do with that fear?" "Elaborate," Kelricks said, fighting to keep his voice level. "We don't just experience fear and shut down," Dr. Chen explained, rising to join her colleague. "We analyze it, question it. We turn our terrors into teaching tools. Every monster in our closet became a story we told around fires. Every existential dread became philosophy, art, science. You're trying to break us with the very things we've spent millennia learning to domesticate." Dr. Porter stood as well, and now all 3 humans were facing the observation window with expressions that the consortium's emotion recognition software struggled to categorize. "Not hostile, not afraid. Something else entirely," So here's our question back to you, Porter said. You've spent all this time studying what makes us afraid. Have you considered what makes you afraid? What makes a species so advanced, so powerful, dedicate entire research stations to understanding something they themselves avoid experiencing? The observation chamber fell silent. Kelrix looked at his colleagues, 37 of the galaxy's premier xenopsychologists, and saw the same realization dawning on each of their faces. They had come to study human fear, and discovered instead that humans had learned something the consortium never had. Fear wasn't a weakness to be exploited. It was a tool to be understood, analyzed, and ultimately mastered. Terminate the protocol, Kelrix said quietly. Release the subjects. As the containment field dropped and the three humans gathered their belongings, Dr. Chen paused at the chamber door. She looked back at the observation window one final time. If you want to understand humanity, she said, you need to understand that we're the species that looked at the dark between the stars and decided to ask it questions. The void doesn't scare us anymore, Dr. Kelrix. We've learned to stare back. The door sealed behind them, and the research team sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Voth spoke. What just happened? Kelrix reviewed the neural scans one more time, seeing patterns his training had never prepared him to interpret. The humans hadn't conquered fear. They'd done something far more impressive. They'd made it curious. I believe, he said slowly, that we just discovered why humans are so dangerous. They don't run from what terrifies them. They turn around and start asking questions. And in the empty observation chamber, the holographic projections flickered and died, leaving only darkness and the echo of questions no one had taught the consortium to answer.